structure of insect head. The insect head is a sclerotized capsule joined to the neck by a joined to the thorax by a membranous neck. It has mouth parts, a labrum, mandibles, maxilla, labium, and sensory organs, which are antenna, compound eyes, and ocelli, which are also called as simple eyes. The head is made up of acron and 6 oral segments. There are many theories on the insect head segmentation, which we will discuss separately. Now comes the orientation of head. In different insects, you will see the head is in different positions. So what are they? First of all, the prognathous head, then the hypognathous and opisthodyngus. So here we will see diagrammatically hypognathous head. Hypognathous head, as you can see in diagram A, it is pointing downwards, that is towards the ground. This type of head orientation is found in herbivorous insects, for example the grasshopper. Then comes the next, that is diagram B, prognathous head. In prognathous head, as you can see, the mouth parts are pointing forwards anteriorly. This type of orientation is found in carnivorous insects, so that the mouth parts can help in catching of the prey. The third type is opisthodyngus. This type of mouth part is found in those insects which are fluid feeders. That means their diet is liquid food. So they have the mouth parts, they are modified into a proboscis which forms a sucking tube. So here we see that the proboscis, it is bent posteriorly and it passes between the legs right up to the thorax. This type of mouth part is found in the bugs. Now when we come to the structure of the head, as I have already told you, there is no segmentation seen. No segmentation can be seen on the head, but there are many grooves on the head which give a strengthening effect to the head. What are the various grooves? Epistomal sulcus, subgenal sulcus, circumocular sulcus, circumantennal sulcus, occipital sulcus, and then there is an ecdysial line and post-occipital suture. First of all, I like to tell you the difference between sulcus and suture. The sulcus is a groove which has only a functional origin. Functional origin means that these grooves are present on the head so that the head can bear the various stress caused by contracting muscles inside the head, like the muscles of the pharynx or the muscles which are used for the movement of the various mouth parts and other sensory organs. And suture has a structural origin. That means it marks the line of fusion of two segments. Then you can see one more, that is ecdysial line. Ecdysial line, it is not a groove, it is just seen as a line, and as you understand by the name, ecdysis, that is molting. So it will help at the time of molting. The capsule of the head cracks, or this is a line of weakness. So the capsule of the head, that is the chitin, will crack at this line of weakness, that is at this line, ecdysial line. Then because of these various sutures, the head is divided into the different areas. Now I will show you diagrammatically. This is the diagram of the insect head. This is the diagram of grasshopper. The first diagram is the anterior view, and the second diagram shows the lateral view of the head. Now coming to the anterior view. First of all, we see the first sulcus which we will discuss is the epistomal sulcus. The epistomal sulcus is joining two pits which are called as anterior tentorial pits. These anterior tentorial pits, as well as there is a pair of posterior tentorial pits. These pits mark the point of attachment of a structure called as tentorium. Tentorium is a endoskeleton, that is, it is present inside the head. It is made of chitin, and it acts like a skeleton, gives strength to the head, and also provides points for attachment of the various muscles. So outside you see that the two anterior arms of the tentorium, the point at which they are attached to the head capsule, they are in form of a pit. So there are two anterior tentorial pits, and the sulcus joining this is called as epistomal sulcus. This epistomal sulcus, it moves laterally in form of subgenal sulcus, and it joins the posterior tentorial pit, which you can see in this lateral view of the head. You can see there is an anterior tentorial pit at the anterior side, and from there starts the this epistomal sulcus is now called as subgenal sulcus, and it joins the anterior tentorial pit and posterior tentorial pit. Now coming back to the anterior view, there is a pair of compound eyes on the head, and around the compound eyes there is a circumocular sulcus. Then at the base of the two antennae there is a circumantennal sulcus. Then we can also see that at the dorsal, that is at the top of the head, there is an inverted Y-shaped line which we called as ecdysial line. I have already told you about this. Then there is another sulcus which joins the circumocular sulcus of the eye to the epistomal sulcus. This is called as subocular sulcus. It is not named here, but there is a line, as you can see there is a line, there is a groove which is joining the circumocular sulcus to the epistomal sulcus, and this sulcus is called as subocular sulcus. Now coming to the lateral side. On the lateral side we see there are two more grooves. One is, the anterior one is called as occipital sulcus. It is an inverted U-shaped sulcus which joins from one lateral side to the other, which goes from one lateral side to the other. And then there is this post-occipital suture. There is only one suture, that is post-occipital suture, and it joins the posterior tentorial pit of one side to the posterior tentorial pit of the other side. So these were all the grooves. Now coming to the various areas. Coming again to the anterior view of the head, we can see three areas starting from the top, that is from the dorsal side. The area between the eyes is called as vertex. Just below the vertex and the base of the antenna, that is the front part of the head, is called as frons. And below the frons, on that is towards the ventral side, is the clypeus, to which is attached the first mouth part, that is the labrum. Now coming to the lateral side. On the lateral side, we see that between the subocular sulcus and the occipital sulcus, this lateral part of the head is called as gena. And below the gena, on the ventral side, that is just below the subgenal sulcus, this area is called as subgena. After the gena comes the occiput, and the last area is called as post-occiput. So these are the different grooves and areas of the head. Now comes the ventral region of the head. As I told you, in the hypognathous head, the mouth parts are pointing downwards, that is towards the substratum, towards the ground. Now between the mouth parts, the cavity is called as preoral cavity, and in this preoral cavity hangs the hypopharynx. If you remember the mouth parts of cockroach, there is the different mouth parts, and in the center is a tongue-like slightly soft structure called as hypopharynx. This hypopharynx divides the preoral cavity into two regions. This I will explain in this diagram. In the diagram, as you can see, this is the lateral view of the head, and on the ventral side you can see anteriorly there is the labrum, posteriorly there is the labium, and they are surrounding, and on the lateral sides are mandibles and maxilla, and they surround a preoral cavity. In this preoral cavity is present the hypopharynx, which divides the preoral cavity into two parts. The anterior part is called as cibarium. In this cibarium opens the mouth, which leads into the alimentary canal, and on the posterior side, this is slightly smaller chamber, and this is called as salivarium, and in this salivarium opens the salivary gland or the salivary duct. Now come the modifications in the head. There are many modifications. What we have discussed till now is the typical structure of the insect head, but there are many modifications in the structure, and most of the modifications which we see are in the posterior part, that is the region into which the neck is attached. So let us discuss with the help of diagram. Now first is the typical structure of the head. What I am showing you in the typical diagram, typical structure is the posterior view of the head. In the posterior view of the head, in the center there is a opening called as occipital foramen. This opening in the back of the head, from this opening pass the various nerve cord and the various organs like the alimentary canal, etc., blood vessels, etc. They will pass from the head into the neck. So this is an opening called occipital foramen, and on the dorsal side of this occipital foramen you can see this post-occipital suture, and this post-occipital suture is an inverted U-shape suture, as we can see, and it is joining the posterior tentorial pits of both the sides. On the ventral side of the of the occipital foramen is attached the lower lip, or what we call as the labium. So this is the typical structure. Now coming to the first modification, which we call as hypostomal bridge. The hypostomal, in case of the hypostomal bridge, what happens that the hypostoma of both the lateral sides, they join together just below the occipital foramen. That is, this is a bridge between the hypostoma. Now, what is hypostoma? As I discussed, there is a subgena area called subgena. The subgena is differentiated into two parts. The anterior part is called as pleurostoma, and the posterior part of the subgena is called as hypostoma. So when both the hypostoma of both the sides, they fuse together just below the occipital foramen, this forms the hypostomal bridge. Then the second modification, which we see in the diagram B, is called as postgenal bridge. In the postgenal bridge, we see that the postgena, it is fused below the occipital foramen, and around the occipital foramen, as you can see, there is a circular area of the post-occiput, and the labium is attached to the postgena. Then comes diagram C, and here the modification is gula. Gula is found in those insects which have a prognathous head. Prognathous means the mouth parts are pointing anteriorly. So there is a long plate from the occipital foramen, which is at the posterior end, to the mouth parts at the anterior end, and this plate is called as gula. It is an elongated plate. The first three modifications, A, B and C, were at the posterior end of the head. Now comes the last, that is the fourth modification, and that is in case of Hymenoptera. We see, that is the bees and wasps, we see that at the front view, we saw in the typical condition, the epistomal sulcus was a straight groove between the two tentorial pits. Now here we see the modification is that the epistomal sulcus is arched or it is curved dorsally, and this is the modification found in Hymenoptera. Thank you.